Give me a second, I gotta find my speech. Colonel Lennox, Command Sergeant Major Krause, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, Sergeant Major Harshman, Lieutenant Colonel Sedovey, thank you for attending today's change of responsibility ceremony, either in person or via CVR. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to have served as a first sergeant within this great organization. It's hard for me to put into words what this position has meant to me, but I'll take a few minutes to try and express my gratitude. I was part of a change of command ceremony 3 weeks ago, and both commanders saved their last thank you for their spouse. I just want you to know in the Rico household, it doesn't work that way. I start every military ceremony thanking the driving force of my life, my wife. So Caroline, no one knows the things you do for me in the background, and that you are paramount to my success. For those of you who don't know, my wife plays a pivotal role in my track record of never being late to PT. She kicks me out of bed, and she tells me to get going. I lecture the soldiers time and time again that I can't be late for the next year or two. Think about the pressure that is, and my wife helps me get that done. We may work long hours, but I can't say this without any reservations. My wife works harder than I do, and it's not up for debate. Sweetheart, thank you for pushing me to go back to school. Thank you for all that you do for the kids, and thank you for supporting my father's move to Georgia. I love you, and I hope this past year hasn't been too hard on you. We have another one to do. Dad, I'm glad you're here, man. I'm honored to have shared this amazing day with you. You've been to 2 ceremonies now, and you've learned more about the Army in the past few weeks than you probably bargained for. I never thought these days would come, but it's truly amazing to share some of life's greatest moments with you. Thank you for the drive and determination that you've distilled within me, and thank you for the discipline that keeps me productive and on task at all times. Once again, thank you for being here. To my children, it pains me that you couldn't be here today. I've been in this Army for 17 years, and for the first time in my career, I got to share my work with each one of you. Without a doubt, the greatest memory I've had as a first sergeant were those days that I took my children to work with me and showed them what I do for a living. They no longer thought all Dad does is beat up soldiers. I don't know what gave them that impression. I take great pride in being the first sergeant of Alpha Company within the 915th Cyber Warfare Battalion. I was a plank holder within the 780th MI Brigade and the Cyber Protection Brigade, but this time it was far different. It was different because I was placed in a position of influence and responsibility far beyond that of my previous roles. I had the opportunity to shape and mold the climate of an entire organization. I came into this position with many goals, but one that stands above the rest is that I wanted to serve as a custodian and steward of this profession. This was manifested by my challenging of the NCOs in this formation. I challenge you to be professional, to never fake it till you make it, know your regulations, and always operate within the parameters of mission command. For those of you who aren't tracking, I'm talking about knowing your left and right limits. Last week, I had a conversation with our battalion command Sergeant Major Harshman, and before I could say it, she said it for me. She said, leaving a first sergeant position is always somewhat bittersweet. I left her office and I thought about that phrase all night. Rumination was getting the best of me. I started to analyze the structure of the word bittersweet, and I felt it's structured backwards. It's generally in reference to something being sweet and then followed by a bitter aftertaste. I can tell you with great confidence, my departure from this organization isn't going to have a bitter aftertaste. Some would say that bittersweet could be used in reference to someone having mixed emotions about a decision. I can assure you that I don't have mixed emotions about my departure. And that's because, as many of the soldiers in Alpha Company and my wife can tell you, I don't have emotions. But I do have fond memories. Before I go to read these, I want to tell you guys, this morning I received a text from First Sergeant Boyer, and it was 2 different texts. And I got that alert and I read one of them, and it said, "It's been fun." And my heart sank a little bit, and I thought, man, you're not going to be able to make it. That's what the first text had to say. So I clicked on that first text, and it was a picture of he and I at paintball. We did the Adventure Warrior, or as you were, the Warrior Adventure Quest for the battalion, and we went out and did paintball together. And in all the memories I was trying to remember as a first sergeant, I forgot the most important one. And it's the day I lost 6, 7 times in a row to the soldiers of this organization. We went out there, I gave them a speech of motivation, like a pregame for football. And I told them, let's go out there and defeat, I think it was 7th Signal Brigade. And when it was time to go out onto the field, they realized we had too many people on our team. So the soldiers immediately threw me to the other team. I never won that day. But the picture was great. Thanks, Battle. So, what I say here is I have fond memories. Just yesterday, I asked Staff Sergeant Leonard, what do you think is my greatest memory as your first sergeant? He told me it's the day you put your diamond on top. He said that answer couldn't be further from the truth. My greatest memory was my children, but there are some other notable memories. These notable memories were never something I did individually, and nearly all of them have something involving the soldiers of Alpha Company. I have memories of the first ruck march on the Commander's Cup. I watched our NCOs and officers of the unit push themselves to their physical limits. The NCOs were hell-bent they wouldn't lose to those officers. The ironic thing, looking back, is those officers of HHC are now their leaders in Alpha Company. I remember the last company barbecue just before we had the COVID-19 social distancing restrictions and the dozen volunteers who stepped up to consume the world's hottest chocolate bar. There was tears, snot, and sheer determination to get through that experience, but we did it together. For the record, I didn't eat the chocolate bar. I also have some moments that make me shake my head. At our first company FTX, Sergeant Gibson, our narrator for today, he introduced me to a group of visiting Army Rangers from Fort Benning, and he said, this is our first sergeant. He's the most alpha male I've ever met in my life. He swears it was a compliment. I don't know where it came from. Specialist Pappas, unprovoked, once told me his wife or his mother was beautiful. I don't know where that came from either. I will always remember being called to the firing line at the live fire range. The soldiers told me a weapon had malfunctioned and they couldn't fix it. When I looked into the weapon, there was a double feed, but even I couldn't believe my eyes. The weapon was jammed with a cigarette butt and a live round. Sergeant Johns, you're still not going to get that photo. And of course, I'll never forget, second greatest honor as a first sergeant, the morning I fired my company guidon bearer. And before you start judging me, he had to be fired before Reveille. You need to know the circumstances. The soldier came to PT, he stood in front of the formation, and his shorts were on backwards. I tell everybody till this day, don't get dressed in the dark for work. The speech wouldn't be complete without me recognizing some individual service members within this organization, so here I go. Captain Schinder, from day one I made it clear. I care about our organization, our soldiers, and your priorities are now mine. Our time together was as painless as I could have asked for. The unified front we shared and the support from you as our company commander was something I respected and appreciated daily. You made coming to work as stress-free as possible, and you enabled this first sergeant to conduct NCO business without fail. Thank you. Captain Ramstead, our time together has been brief, but we've worked together for the last year or so. I feel I know you well. I sincerely appreciate the trust you have in me and the trust you have in the NCO Corps. I know you and First Sergeant De La Cruz will make a great team. My last recommendation and guidance to you, sir, is before you do anything, CYA. Call your attorney. Never hesitate to reach out. I'm only 4 houses down the road. I'm sure there are many of you that can relate to finding a stellar NCO within your ranks. You start to pile on the work and you challenge them to succeed daily. I like to call it punishment by performance. In my case, that stellar NCO is Staff Sergeant Wu. If there was ever an NCO built for this profession, I believe it is Staff Sergeant Wu. Wu, I want you to remember the countless lessons learned and the unfathomable amount of counseling we've conducted. I know every day at work felt like NCO PD, but I also know that much of the guidance and mentorship will not be wasted. You will be a senior leader in this Army, and you will succeed. Don't lose your drive, don't lose your focus, and don't ever lose your old slides. Staff Sergeant Leonard, Samuel, Porter, Ware and McAdoo. You junior leaders are the backbone of this company. You are young leaders, as you were. If you young leaders haven't read the Sergeant's book by Command Sergeant Major Haga, written in 1982, allow me to share and explain what being the backbone of a company means. Think of this unit as the human body. The human body consists of brains, nerves, and muscles. If we sever the backbone, this body will collapse and become paralyzed. The brains will remain, but the nerve, muscle, and power are all gone. The backbone keeps this body strong, upright, and straight. This is the relationship between the non-commissioned officer and the Army. That's what being the backbone is all about. Without each of you, this unit would just be a puddle of failed parts. Many of you have reached out to me over the last 2 weeks thanking me for my efforts as your first sergeant and telling me about the impact I've left upon you. I want to say to each of you, thank you for leading the young soldiers of this profession, and thank you for showing them what right looks like. Keep it up. I know I came into work and gave you guys research and quiz questions daily. I would ask you to explain a process or action in the Army or define an acronym you just used. Without fail, you guys started to take pride in the profession, and your daily attempts to get the trivia questions correct were commendable. I hope I showed each of you a different approach to training, leading, molding, mentoring, and inspiring your future soldiers. Keep being great, and as always, lead from the front. A little over a year and a half ago, I was sitting in Friendship Chapel here on Fort Gordon. We were having a first sergeant mentorship program within the Cyber Protection Brigade. There were about 40 to 50 senior NCOs who were aspiring to be first sergeants. During the conversations and open discussion among the leaders, things got tense. Verbal exchanges were no longer productive, and everyone viewed one another as competition for future first sergeant billets. One master sergeant, who was a sergeant major select at the time, stood up above the rest. That master sergeant told the entire audience, when you're a first sergeant, you can't be adversarial towards your fellow first sergeants. You're going to need one another. You're going to share solutions, and you should never figure something out and not share it with your fellow first sergeants. I never forgot those examples that master sergeant gave that day, and that guidance that was given, I took that lesson with me when I got here to this organization. I made it a point to ensure we had a teamwork climate among our master sergeants and first sergeants in this organization. I shared every template, provided every solution, and included every senior leader on traffic for their situational awareness. I never stopped supporting the guidance given in the charge that day. So First Sergeant Boyer, First Sergeant Dela Cruz, Master Sergeant Urbizo, and Master Sergeant Welch, thank you guys for being great teammates and battle buddies. And to bring that story full circle, the Master Sergeant in the church that day is now our very own Battalion Command Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major Harshman. Thank you, Sergeant Major. First Sergeant Dela Cruz, 2 weeks ago you walked into my office and you asked me a simple question. You said, hey brother, how long is your speech gonna be? We both shared a light laugh and I promised you I'd have you out of here in time to get your son. But what I can't promise you is that your nights and your days won't run together, or that your list of things to do for the day will ever get done. But I can promise you this, you have the greatest soldiers this Army has to offer. You have the support of a commander and a team of senior NCOs that can't be overstated. I wish you well, brother, and I look forward to hearing about your company's success from across the street. If you need anything, you know how to reach me. There are several other individuals that I would like to talk about, but for the sake of time, I'll simply say thank you. So thank you to Major Hicks, Lieutenants Lahamadou, Sullivan, Cordial, Baker, and Neal. To the soldiers of Alpha Company, you're all amazing. I believe I had the honor and privilege of leading some of the greatest soldiers, warrant officers, and officers the Cyber Mission Force has to offer. Some have said I'm a bit of a throwback first sergeant. I don't try and shed that perception. I took great pride in installing military traditions like reading of the Medal of Honor recipients at our closeout formations on Fridays. The best day of PT for me was First Sergeant PT. Monday morning of this week, we did a PT session, and it was very difficult. We ran down an unthinkable downgrade for 3/4 of a mile, we did some squats, and then we ran back up the hill with everything we could muster. Once we stopped feeling sorry for ourselves, I gave every service member the option. We go back down the hill again, or you run back at your own pace to your vehicle. Going back down the hill seemed like a terrible idea, and I swear to you, not even I wanted to do it. Each of us knew if we went back down that hill, we would reach complete exhaustion. It was a gut check in every sense of the word, as you were phrased. It's hard to explain the pride and admiration I felt when I saw 4 soldiers venture down that hill with me, knowing full well we weren't going to make it back up. That decision to run back down the hill isn't one many soldiers will make, especially if given the option. But I want you to know that discipline and determination didn't surprise me one bit. My final request to the soldiers of Alpha Company for the remainder of your military careers, if given the option, always run back down that hill with your brothers and sisters. Believe they're going to get you back to your RP. And for you staff sergeants, if you don't know what RP means, I want an answer by COB today. I'm just kidding. In closing, so many of you may not know the following reference, but allow me to provide some context. In the movie Gladiator, there's a scene where Proximo is explaining to Maximus, Russell Crowe's character, how he'll win his freedom as a gladiator. Proximo told Maximus, if you ever earn your freedom, you'll be given a wooden sword known as a rudis. On Monday of this week, my soldiers gave me a rudis, the sword of freedom. When you get that sword, you're also known as a Radari. These Radari are now free to retire or seek other employment. Many of the Radari continue to work as managers, trainers, or referees for the gladiators. And a very select few Radari would even choose to continue to fight in the arena despite earning their freedom. Although I admire the gesture, and I'm eternally grateful for the presentation of the rudis, I'm sure many of you know what I'm going to say next. I'm not done fighting. I'm not leaving the arena, and I'm not anywhere near retirement. I know that I've completed my duties as the first sergeant here, but I fully intend to train, lead, and mentor the young men and women of this amazing Army. Once again, thank you to everybody who's here and everybody watching on CVR. Alpha 7 out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the First Sergeant of Alpha Company 915th Cyber Warfare Battalion, First Sergeant Carlos de la Cruz.